Chris, hello. Happy summer.
Good morning, friends. I miss you.
I know. It's we do miss you coming in. It's too long. But we have this great weather, so that we're enjoying. So, first of all, what are your feelings on the moves? So I don't think we've talked to you. What are your thoughts so far on the moves the Celtics have made this offseason?
Yeah, necessary evil, right? Like it's no fun, and especially if you're a fan. Like I've had a lot of people that are maybe casual basketball people that are like, "Wait, I don't understand. Like, why are we trading Kristaps Porzingis for Georges Niang?" And the reality is the CBA has complicated how you put together a roster. The Celtics got ahead of it, won a title. The rent has come due a little bit here. The idea that Jason Tatum is going to miss all this time as well complicates matters. So ultimately, it just put the Celtics in a tough situation. And I think Brad did about as good as he could have done to get below that second apron, to start the process of trimming money. I think there's still dominoes to fall. But I do think it's going to open some pathways to start figuring out what the next iteration of this roster looks like. And it's not very fun in the moment, and I don't exactly know what next year will look like. But there's a pathway back to being a title contender.
I haven't asked this yet, but why do you think Portland wanted Holiday?
It's a good question. We were joking last night. I wonder who called who first.
It just is an odd team for him to go to. Like they got too caught up on the end of the season or something.
Yeah. So I think a couple things. I think one, every team in the league feels like they're a player or two away from being truly competitive, and I think Portland really likes the young core it has, that it wants to lean into a defensive reputation. And sometimes you just need to teach young players how to win, how to take that next step. And Drew Holiday, like, we can sit here and debate how much he's got left in the tank, and I think he still can be a very good player, and maybe even thrust into a bigger role. He can go back. There were times in Milwaukee where he scored much more than he had to in Boston. But I think he just nurturing Scoot Henderson, nurturing that young team, and just trying to put them on a pathway to being competitive. Do I think it puts them on par with the Thunder and the Rockets? No, but like you do need to sometimes just get guys like that to establish a winning culture. And I think he could be really good for them. But I am surprised. I mean, for them to have to attach picks to make the deal, and for Brad to not have to. The big storyline was, Brad Stevens is going to have to attach a first round pick to get off that money. And instead, you get a young player that has a defined skill set. And it's a really good swing for Boston there in terms of what they got back, even if it didn't cut as much money as maybe we thought it would in moving out Drew Holiday.
Looking at this roster now, there aren't a lot of bigs, and I was pretty surprised they didn't take one at the end of the first round last night. Who are going to be the bigs on this team in the fall?
Yeah, well, first off, tonight I think you'll see like Kalkbrenner and Reynaud will both be available. At the start of round 2. I wonder if the Celtics would lean there. They typically don't prioritize need over value, but if it's a tiebreaker, if you look at your roster and say, hey, look, right now, Nimi Keita is the only big sign for next season. But I think part of the dominoes that will fall moving forward will be the clearing more money, trying to get to a spot where you can re-sign Luke Cornett, maybe re-sign Al Horford. Some of that will be dictated by the market that those players have. And but I think there's a good chance both are back. And just, again, trying to maintain as much as the score as you can. But they do have to clear the money. Right now, they're only a little bit below that second apron. You got to probably get, but I know it's like sticker shock, but like Luke Cornett is a $12 million, $14 million player now based on the way he played. And you have to decide if you're going to be the team that pays him that money, and how do you clear that money to get there.
Were you getting nervous at all about the prospect of them moving Jaylen Brown, because the chatter seemed to be increasing, and whether it was coming from a real place or not, I don't know. Was any of the Jaylen Brown trade prior to the draft last night real, or was that just people getting excited for the possibility of it happening?
I think we all understand that the situation the Celtics are in, they have to explore everything, that you have to listen to what offers are out there. I always thought it was going to take just like an unbelievable offer for them to even consider moving on from either Jaylen Brown or Derek White. It's so hard to know if what teams are willing to part with. I thought it was interesting that I know Austin Ainge got asked about it in Utah last night and said, we never contacted the Celtics about it. Naturally, like all of us try to connect dots and what teams would be interested. You start thinking about where Jaylen grew up in Atlanta. You start thinking about Danny and Austin being in Utah. Like, would these teams be willing to put together packages that were intriguing? Ultimately, I just don't think the Celtics were ever going to be overwhelmed by what they got. And I think I'll continue to say it. Like, I think they're really excited about what the possibility is if Jaylen is the focal point of this roster, finding out how he can do in that role and like the way he'll embrace that and the way that he is typically kind of gone up a level whenever he's been put in that situation. And it's between him and Derek, Peyton, like I still think there's a ton of talent here in a kind of wide open Eastern Conference. And I'm not telling you they're championship level, but I think they'll be fun. I think they'll be, in the mix. I think the natural without that burden of expectations that sort of hovered over them last year, I think you just play a little bit more free. And so I think they'll be interesting. I don't know like which way it'll tip. And they've got, again, flexibility to decide like if things don't go well, you can pivot mid-season next year. You can explore, the same sort of options that are available now. And maybe you're more likely to make a bold decision. But I just didn't think at this point. Remember too, like new ownership coming in. I don't think Bill Chisholm wants to come in and watch a watered down product. Like he's a super fan. He wants to see this team succeed, and I think Jaylen and Derek White are a big part of that.
Okay, there is the team not wanting to get rid of Jaylen Brown, but there's also the other side. Are you confident that the Celtics were getting a lot of calls? Like it seemed because you've seen lesser players go for a lot. And the way that the NBA is now, you could make a very good argument that trading Brown right now would be the correct thing to do based on, parity and needing depth and the reality of them taking up more than 50% of your salary cap, all of those things. Like, did you hear anything about, were there teams super interested? You mentioned Utah said they didn't reach out. That seems odd to me. Like, why wasn't there more chatter about Jaylen Brown? You didn't hear his name during the draft.
And again, I'm sure teams explore everything, right? Like we
I'm
always
aware.
wonder.
Yeah. But like, I'm surprised. Like, I guess because San Antonio obviously thought we'd rather have Dylan Harper, and Dylan Harper's a redundancy on that team. So it is weird. It is odd to me that I just expected last night a lot of talk, like a lot of speculation on Jaylen Brown, and it just wasn't there. It didn't seem like anything was cooking.
I think, especially considering, I thought there would be guys that missed out on Durant, guys that don't think they have enough to go get Giannis. Teams that I thought they would think there was a market there, and that we would hear more chatter. That teams would try to overwhelm, and it's usually when that happens, when teams are from the outside trying to pursue a player. Sometimes that's where all the rumors originate from, right? Like they're trying to create a stir, trying to like get a market for that player, and I wonder if like. Again, it just never got close enough to rise to the level where, it really felt like there was something out there that either side would commit to. Now, look, it's a weird off season. No one has cap space. Teams are still kind of figuring out what the next step is. You can still trade all these draft guys. So if San Antonio sits back and says, Dylan Harper just doesn't fit our future, you can still go explore Giannis. You can explore Jaylen. Like there's still going to be opportunities. I just go back to it from a Celtic perspective. I just feel like they're pretty comfortable with where they're at. They like the flexibility. You can still kind of like get into the year and see what happens. And I don't know if there's any rush to sort of make rash decisions on the core of this team based on the circumstances that you're kind of navigating.
Do you think that they could be successful with two guys taking up that much of the salary cap?
I think it's hard. And I think you have to draft right. I think you have to prioritize getting some picks here and hitting on them and really like leaning into a pathway that you haven't had to navigate in probably since Jaylen and Jason, right? Like maximizing every pick. And they're probably not going to be lucky enough to be at 3, but you're going to be at, can you trade up into the mid lottery? Can you find complementary pieces? Certainly, like, look, I'm a numbers nerd. I'm not telling you the math is easy. I'm not saying it's sustainable. I think we're going to see it around the league that when two guys are commanding 35% of the cap and take up 70% of the cap, it's like really, really hard. But can you find a series of 10 to $14 million players that are your core instead of the $30 million that Kristaps and Drew Holiday were eating up. I mean, that's the challenge. And you've got to find the next batch of Derek Whites. And it sounds so simple, but obviously it's not. And so I think that's what the Celtics challenge is here is you got to really hone in and identify what the next couple swings are. And you got to be patient while waiting for Tatum because truly, I believe them when they say they don't have a firm grasp on like when exactly he'll be back. But I think everyone's sort of planning for 2 years out.
Yeah. And I think it would be disastrous to rush him. Is everyone, because I was under the impression that based on Kobe and Durant that, it was a foregone conclusion that he'd, get back up to where he was. But then the guys here on the show were telling me about, there's really just like a 50%. What did you guys say it was? What percentage chance was it, Hardy? You said?
Yeah, but all those dudes were super old.
Yeah, well, Durant was 2 years older.
Okay, so for like all athletes, it's like 70%, but for basketball, it's closer down to 50 in terms of like full return to form.
Now, I think he's going to come back, so let's get that out of the way. I don't want to sound like I'm wishing ill on the guy. Like, I do think he'll come back, but I think I hear people on this station going like, well, it could be, 6 months, and I'm thinking, well, that's not a good idea. Right. Don't have him for a year and make sure he doesn't get hurt. If my point is that if it's like a 50% thing for basketball players in general, I like his chances a lot more than that. But I also I wouldn't want to screw around with him this season, so I'm kind of writing off this season.
I couldn't agree more. The other part of it is when Durant tore his Achilles, he was 3 years older than Tatum, so I don't think the comp is there. And you remember Kobe, guys. Kobe was much older than both of them.
But they both came back.
They both came back, but Kobe isn't a fair comparison because he was already 34, 35.
But I'm comparing them positively to him.
Yes, they actually came back and played. Yes,
Durant is still a top 20 player.
But he misses all kinds of time now. He misses more games now.
But is that because of his Achilles? I don't know. I'm honestly I'm not arguing.
I think the big thing for me comes down to Tatum is the sort of player that's going to want to come back as fast. He's going to look at the way Kobe came back quick and say, "Man, I'm going to beat that timeline." And I think the Celtics, the hardest thing they're going to navigate next year is trying to tell him, "Hey, you got to put in. You just pace yourself here." Like it's just in my mind. And again, I'm not a doctor. I don't know these things, but it seems super ambitious to think that if he's healthy right before the start of the playoffs next year, that the right thing is to throw him into a high-pressure situation where everything is amplified and that be his first basketball. It sounds like a recipe for disaster, and I just hope they tread cautiously with that, with the idea that there's sort of a longer-term vision here, even if that's just not next season, but the season after. Just everything should be geared towards maximizing that potential when he is a go, but that shouldn't take away from what happens next year. I think this team can still be in the mix. They can be fun, and I can think they can be better than what the expectation will be without Tatum.
See, I think they were presented an opportunity to kind of turn this thing over in real time and with an eye on the next not this season, but the following season. And they if they don't do something that now, they're going to miss that opportunity. But just in terms of the injury, it would be like if Paul Skeens got Tommy John surgery, in say Pittsburgh, it's an alternate universe, and Pittsburgh's in the playoffs. And he blows out his elbow in the playoffs. And Pittsburgh makes the playoffs the following season. You pitching Paul Skeens? No, I'm not right. No, that elbow is worth more to me than that season. That's the same thing with Tatum's Achilles. I'm not screwing around with Yes, that is absolutely correct. Any debate that they should have stayed over the second apron or that Wick Grossbeck would have stayed over the second baseman apron is nonsense. You wouldn't have done it. You listening would not have done it. I wouldn't have done it. No one in this room would have done it. No one. $500 million is not worth it. It's not. There is one thing about the cynicism of Bert saying that the owners are basically playing a trading places game with the audience where the fans where they care more about how you're doing business than winning on the football field, which I do think is fascinating. But there's also losing $500 million for no reason.
So, Chris, if they had like run the table and just swept their way to another championship, and I understand that Porzingis would have had to have been healthy and all that stuff, even then, would there have been a chance you think they would have tried to bring back this same team?
I think there would have had to been some consideration to it, but yeah, like I think the moves you saw made already were probably going to happen regardless, and maybe you're tempted if Tatum is healthy and they just run through the playoffs again to keep this thing together, and then you pay the super high.
Okay,
tax
what was
bill, but
give everyone what would have the tax bill been?
so it would have been $500 million. So
$500 million, and that's in addition, by the way.
No, I think
this.
Well, that's
all
total
inclusive.
spend. It would have been a $230 million roster, a $270 million tax bill.
So
but yeah,
my bad. It was $270 million tax bill. My bad. that changes everything.
Total of $500 million for one season.
Now, I don't believe that the Celtics bring in $500 million in totality when you factor in all the other expenses.
The fact that they don't own their own building kind of hampers that effort.
Because I'm wondering like how much gross they make a year, and I know it's many millions of dollars. I'm not sure if it's $500 million. I mean, they have a practice facility and all these other things, a staff that's off the court, doctors and things, real doctors. I mean, those don't run cheap. You got the guy that takes Missoula through the rainforest. They went on a 3-mile hike.
Barefoot.
Like old people. There were sticks and everything.
Josh Wainskin, I believe his name is. Is that correct?
Yeah,
That is
that's
correct.
his. Yeah, that's his name, and he's part of the team now, and he's part of the whole thing that goes on there.
He
So
just kind of wanders around in the background. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Chris, if you don't know, they went from very hot saunas into cold waters, so it was like they were at Lifetime. It was.
do you ever do that, Fred? Do you do the cold plunge?
Not only do I do
here
it,
we
not
go.
only do I do it, Chris, I
Oh,
did
boy.
it yesterday. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
It wasn't hot enough outside for your boy, so I went sauna cold plunge steam. That's why the skin looks like it does today. I don't know if you're on YouTube. You can see me. You're on Zoom.
Yeah, I can. You look great.
Thanks, buddy. All right, so let's talk about who they took. Hugo Gonzalez, is Adolfo's cousin. So he's from Real Madrid. They got him when he was 9. So I would imagine if you're S out of luck if you're 9 years old in Spain and they haven't discovered you yet as the next basketball prodigy. But he's apparently, I've read 4 sentences on him, and I'll tell you this, Chris. He's a hard worker. Mm-hmm. That's what I've gleaned from this.
Can't shoot, but a hard worker.
Doesn't matter. He's a hard worker.
High motor, I think, is the line we're going to use most frequently.
That's
I
right.
think if you do watch his tape, he plays hard. He cuts. He does a lot of the things that I think the Celtics want to kind of tweak with their offense. And I'm not telling you that the 19-year-old 28th pick from Spain is going to come in and get a ton of time here, but I do think the goal ultimately is to find players that play a certain way. I think what we saw every year after watching the NBA Finals, I think teams.
TJ McConnell.
I don't know if TJ's a better scorer than Hugo will probably be, but I do think if you're telling me we're gonna get a backcourt of Hugo and Peyton Pritchard, like that could be fun.
Gritty.
Just
Gritty.
guys that are scrappy,
Yeah.
scrappy guys,
White. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
That is another synonym.
That's
for it.
right.
It's all code.
It's made for Boston. All right. So now, but there is interesting. They have a pick at the top of the second round, and this should not go unnoticed because there are a couple big men available. And again, I don't know anything about this, but I did hear an analyst yesterday saying the kid from Creighton, 5th-year senior,
Ryan
Kalkbrenner?
Kalkbrenner.
Yeah, in his mind projects to be a starting center in the NBA. Now, it's not Karl Anthony Towns or anything. Well, probably a bad example. He's not Anthony Davis or anything, but he could be a starting center, and that's not nothing. I mean, if the Celtics in the second round under that pay can get a guy who can be their starting center for a couple years, that sounds like a win for me. What are you hearing about the top end of this draft? They go big for sure.
You know what? I don't think you ever lean on need because needs change so quickly. You make a couple roster moves, all of a sudden you're overflowing with centers. But undeniably, like right now, that's the most obvious need for this team. And if nothing else, to put someone in the pipeline long term, even if you bring back Cornette and Al, like you need some younger bodies to start developing. So I don't hate the idea, and I think they know, if they're at pick 32, that one of those guys is almost certainly going to be there, whether it's Maxime Reynaud from Stanford or Kalkbrenner from Creighton. Now Kalkbrenner is a little bit like Luke Cornette 2.0. very similar players. I'm not sure if the personality is the same, but the same buzz is out there. Like he's good enough defensively and can give you what you need offensively. That he's going to be a if nothing else a high level reserve at the NBA level. Reynaud's a little bit more intriguing, more of a floor stretcher, can shoot the three. Really smart kid, high basketball IQ. I wouldn't hate either of those players there, but there's also like a whole batch of wings. And again, I'm not the biggest draft guy, but I sit there and watch a lot of these highlight videos after the season ends and try to tune my mind into what Brad Stevens might be looking for. And there's guys like Adu Thero who just are super athletic and could sort of follow the Hugo mold there, where they're maybe a little bit raw, but bring some crazy athleticism.
Just sounds like you're making noises at this point. You're like Tugo and Cockbo and Dugo. I mean, you're just like making sounds. I mean, you're so in the weeds with these guys. My God, slow down for the rest of us.
I'm sorry, Fred. I get excited. I had to put in a lot of research because a week ago
I understand, but you're moving at a very advanced level that I can't follow, and if I can't follow it, certainly John can. All right, so
he's got
what does Wallach want? Wallach must have a guy.
He wants to be on the road to Philadelphia, but that's not until tomorrow afternoon.
It's true.
He's going to his in-laws' house
after
this
the show.
week.
Very excited.
So he's fit to be tied. He checked out a long time ago. What would you like him to do, John?
I'd like them to re-sign either Cornette or Horford, one or the other, to save money.
You don't want both?
Well, no, because you're so bumped up against that second apron. They still need to clear out money. And you were just talking about how Cornette's a $12 million player. How much is Horford going to command?
Well,
you don't have the room. You don't have people you can clear out to sign both of these guys. So you sign one of them and you draft a center tonight.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably the most prudent pathway forward. I wonder, obviously Luke's already taken the hometown discount to come back last year. I don't think you're getting any discounts. Just like he's put himself in position to be paid, and there's going to be teams out there that will pay him. And I think that's the one you gotta pony up the cash for and make sure he's here. Al, I wonder, like, if Al is just committed to, like, doesn't want to play anywhere else, can you bring him back? He's made $300+ million. The problem is going to be there's going to be a market for him. And I think teams like Detroit, where with his Michigan roots, you start looking around the league, there are teams that are going to want him. And will Al be willing to play for cheaper money, knowing that, maybe they can pace him a little bit here, then knowing the system and how it goes? I do think it's ambitious to think they can get both back, but I think, Brad coming out last night and sort of announcing it sort of shows that that's the team's hope in terms of filling out that front court. And then if you get a young guy, like, that's good for the future, and learning from a Al Horford wouldn't be the worst thing for any of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great to learn from Al, but if you're depending on how you're looking at this next season and what their expectation is for Tatum and the team going forward, bringing back Al Horford for a year seems kind of silly almost. I mean, it's that,
which is why they're going to sign him to a 2 or 3 year deal.
Yeah, it'll be 2 years with an option or something like that. Like, you're going to give yourself some flexibility and let him have the ability to, if Father Time ever catches up with him. But yeah, no, look, I think
you're right. It probably won't. Yeah, he'll probably play forever. No, it's
hopefully
like it's done.
Veteran minimum. Like something like that,
I don't know. We can only dream. All right, look, Chris Forsberg. I mean, that's the stuff of fantasy. I mean, let's not count our chickens. Chris Forsberg, we've missed you so much. It's such a great treat to get to talk to you.
If you like that clip, check out more videos from Toucher and Hardy here. For more Celtics analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. And for all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.